Revealed, the amazing journey of a 25-year-old from basket case to inspiring businessman, Jake Thompson can't escape the peeling paint of his father's old office. The faded photographs lining the walls feel like eyes, unblinking and judgmental, watching him fail at some cosmic test. It's become a cage, each flicker of the overhead fluorescent light a reminder of his torment. The townspeople outside seem to live effortlessly, gathering for barbecues and laughing without a care, while Jake is an observer, stuck between expectations and crippling anxiety. Bound by the weight of his father's legacy, he feels the relentless pressure pushed down on him. The self-doubt that he fights daily creeps in like a cold wind, pulling him into a fog of uncertainty that he remembers the little boy he was, plagued by poverty and constant disappointment, never quite good enough in his father's eyes. That child is still with him, trembling at the edges of his consciousness, terrified of adult responsibilities. A lifetime of knowing that family values are everything in this tight-knit community makes him feel like an outsider. Each day spent in this office is another day where hope slips further from reach. Then one fateful afternoon, fate intervenes with the arrival of Todd Mason. Once a rival in high school, Todd has stepped into success while Jake flounders. The condescending laughter echoes in Jake's mind, loud, brash, mocking. It's venom, seeping into his veins, reviving years of buried insecurities and hidden talents. He stands there, paralyzed, caught off guard as Todd dismisses him, challenging Jake's worth in a single breath. Something stirs deep within him, a flicker of determination that feels reckless but exhilarating. Shaken, he is confronted with a choice: stay defeated or realize that perhaps he holds potential wrapped in layers of self-doubt. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Fueled by bitterness and dissolving despair, he meets Mr. Caldwell, a retired mentor who sees what Jake has yet to discover in himself. Mr. Caldwell becomes his guide, but Jake battles ghosts from his past that whisper accusations he'll never escape the label of basket case. Other townsfolk provide skeptical glances, voices of doubt coating their opinions sharper than the fresh winter air. Each question they raise sticks to him like glue, a momentum of internal conflict swirling in his gut. Then came the twist of fate. Jake learns he has inherited his father's failing business. Instead of crumbling under the weight, he views it as an opportunity, a launching pad to rise from his father's shadow and forge his own path. Yet the road isn't clear. As he determines to redefine the business, whispers of self-doubt grow louder. Every misstep in meetings is a haunting echo of childhood failures, a feeling of never being enough that challenges his resolve. He is caught in a relentless storm, at times clinging to a sense of hope, only to falter once more under the glaring spotlight of expectation. The financial cliff looms, and Jake faces a monstrous anxiety attack that tightens around his chest like a vice. His mind races with scenarios, each worse than the last: the failure of his father's legacy, his own inadequacies reflected in every failure, the knowledge that the tall tales of his potential might end in an embarrassing disaster. With sweat prickling at his brow, visions of disappointments flood his thoughts. The moment holds, teetering on the edge of an abyss. What if he falls? What if the change he dares to initiate is the very thing that leads to ruin? The clock ticks down to the moment he must act. Will the shadows of his past consume him, or will he find the inner strength to step into the light? Jake stands at a critical crossroads, the weight of his battles bubbling over, the future a gripping uncertainty just out of reach. The silence in the office felt suffocating as Jake's thoughts churned. He was stuck, paralyzed by the very legacy he desired to alter. He tapped his fingers against the desk, reflecting on Mr. Caldwell's encouraging words. Every great businessman has faced insurmountable odds, Jake. It's not about what you inherit, it's about what you choose to build. But the path didn't seem clear. The echoes of Todd's laughter rang in his ears, taunting him, calling forth his deepest fears. Determination flickered again within him, but it felt like a fragile candle in a windstorm. Jake clenched his jaw, willing himself to focus. He needed a plan not just to avoid failure but to see success. With shaking hands, he opened his laptop, searching for inspiration. He needed not just a business strategy but a vision that belonged solely to him. As he clicked through various models of successful entrepreneurs, he stumbled upon stories of figures who started from nothing and built empires. Each narrative stirred something new inside him, a tantalizing mixture of hope and intensity. Why couldn't he craft a story from his own experiences? Why couldn't he reshape the narrative around his father's business and make it his own? Jake's fingers grazed over the keyboard, building a framework for a rewritten business plan. Each word felt liberating, translating the oppressive weight into a strategic manifesto for change. He decided to host a community meeting, get local insights, gather ideas not merely to save the business but to invigorate the community that had judged him. Seeking their involvement would equate shared ownership of the revitalized company, marking a significant departure from the solitary confinement he felt for so long. Yet the thought of facing those skeptical townsfolk instigated waves of dread. What if they laughed? What if they saw him as nothing more than a basket case digging himself deeper? The thought twisted like a knife in his gut. Self-doubt danced mockingly at the edges of his resolve. But something in him had shifted. A part of Jake yearned to forge his identity, to articulate who he would become outside of his father's shadow, outside of communal expectations. He had to confront those voices and prove wrong every whisper that had labeled him a failure. The idea of failure did not frighten him now. It was the potential of success, the complexities of realization that sparked ferocity in his veins. He pictured stepping into the office, standing against the gazes from the townsfolk, and asserting that he was more than what they believed. That for every glance of skepticism, there would be a rebuttal of perspective of new beginnings that could transform a dusty legacy into a shining future. His heart raced as he prepared for the meeting, a rush of adrenaline overshadowing the fear, leading him to a revelation. He carried within himself capabilities that had long been buried. The self-doubt flooding his system was mere noise. What if he could harness that energy, potential boiling at the surface, and turn it into fuel? The day of the meeting arrived, and Jake stood in front of the gathered faces of the community, a sea of familiar and unfamiliar souls blending into a daunting assembly. Every heartbeat echoed in his ears as he faced them. The voices of anxiety shouted for retreat, each one laced with doubt, begging for the familiar comfort of silence. As he opened his mouth to speak, Jake felt the weight of expectation settle around him, but alongside it was a newfound resolve. The truths of his journey, the depths of despair, and the flicker of hope surged within him, begging for expression and acknowledgement. But as he prepared to share this, a sharp voice broke through. What makes you think you can lead this? That voice, one Jake recognized all too well, filled the room with tension. He locked eyes with Todd Mason, standing at the back, a smirk contorting his features, daring him to falter. The moment encapsulated everything Jake had fought against. Would he crumble under the pressure, or would he rise and reshape his entire reality? In that charged atmosphere, a decision brewed, and with it, a potential transformation awaited. A heavy silence fell over the room following Todd's sardonic remark. Jake's heart raced, a wild drumbeat of uncertainty drowning out the voices of encouragement that had surged within him just moments before. He felt the heat of a dozen eyes fixated on him, weighing him down with expectations, judgment, and the burden of an inherited legacy that felt increasingly suffocating. But in that uncomfortable spotlight, something within him ignited. He recognized that this moment was not merely a challenge, it was an opportunity for authenticity and transformation. Why had he come here? What had driven him to confront this room full of scrutinizing faces? It wasn't about merely saving the business, it was about reshaping who he was. Jake took a deep breath, channeling the memories of those he admired, the risk-takers, the visionaries. He remembered the way they faced adversity with clarity and focus. The smirk on Todd's face began to fade from his mind, as if it were a cloud dissipating in the light of a new day. He didn't want to be defined by others' doubts any longer. Because I believe in change, he heard himself say, drawing from a well of conviction he'd yet to fully understand. The words tasted unfamiliar but empowering. They left his lips like stones tossed into a still pond, circles of influence expanding outward in a tumultuous embrace. Change can be driven by vision and collaboration. He didn't just say it, he felt it. The purpose behind his voice was grounded in a promise to himself and to the town he had once felt isolated from. I want to take the legacy my father built and evolve it into something that reflects not just his dreams but also the ambitions of this community. There was an energy shift in the room, a stir of curiosity mingling with residual skepticism. As Jake spoke, he noticed a loose thread unraveling, tugged gently by his resolve. He shared his vision not just as a scripted presentation but as a narrative infused with his own experiences, his struggles, and the growth that came from them. He outlined not just what he could offer but what they could accomplish together. He urged them to contribute their ideas, to share their thoughts on how the business could adapt to their needs, how it could thrive in a manner that benefited them all. Each sentence fell into place like a puzzle piece fitting perfectly into a larger picture of collaboration. As he continued, Todd's expression shifted from derision to something more contemplative, as if Jake's challenge had sparked a flicker of realization within him as well. When Jake finished, applause, a hesitant but genuine blend of surprise and support, broke the initial tension. There it was, the first glimmer of potential transformation. The rush of adrenaline coursed through him again, heavier this time, intensified by the knowledge that he had stood firm, not just for himself but for something greater. A woman near the front asked how he envisioned incorporating the community into this transition. Her question was a lifeline, and Jake seized it, eager to elaborate on his ideas about local engagement and investment in the business. This encouraged discussion. The room gradually filled with voices as doubts began to lift, revealing eager minds pondering the promise of a shared future. But as the meeting progressed and sparks of collaboration ignited, Jake couldn't ignore the dread lurking beneath the encouraging responses. Todd remained silent at the back, his face a mask of inscrutability. What kind of retaliation could he muster in this new paradigm? This newfound unity could invite not just challenge but also hostility from those unwilling to see differently. As the meeting concluded and Jake sensed the burgeoning excitement of an awakened community, he couldn't shake the feeling of approaching confrontation. There were risks ahead, and with them, there would be obstacles to navigate. Shifting legacies were never without their pushback. That evening, exhausted yet exhilarated, he sat at his kitchen table, contemplating the weight of his journey ahead. He knew he had taken a significant step toward claiming his identity, but doubts began to creep back in like shadows closing in at dusk. The thought was almost paralyzing. Could he truly navigate this momentum? Little did he know, Todd's silence was not an absence of response, it was a precursor to his own plan to undermine everything Jake was trying to build. In any battle for transformation, there were always unseen forces at play, and Jake was about to discover that he had not only ignited hope but also roused opposition that could threaten everything he hoped to achieve. What Jake didn't realize was that identity was forged not just in moments of triumph but also through the fires of conflict. He would have to brace himself. The time had come not only to shape his future but to confront every adversary waiting in the wings. As dawn broke, casting a soft glow across the cluttered kitchen, Jake simmered in a mixture of apprehension and fervor. His previous night's resolve lingered like the aroma of freshly brewed coffee. It was time to redirect that energy, to prepare for what lay ahead. He knew that his small victory during the meeting was merely the first step. The battle for genuine transformation had only begun. Jake spent the morning crafting a strategy, laying out a plan to garner support while still keeping a vigilant eye on Todd. Each bullet point on the page became an anchor for his purpose. He pored over market statistics, community needs, and examples of businesses that had succeeded through collaboration. Open communication would be his weapon, he understood this. It would mean incorporating perspectives, not just from the community, but from each member of his team as well. In the midst of his preparation, a constant background hum of doubt persisted. What if this motivation was merely a facade? He could still hear Todd's snide remarks echoing in his mind. Was he truly ready to lead or too naive to see the bigger picture? As he wrestled with these issues, Jake found himself returning to a moment from his childhood, a time when he had petulantly declared he would never succumb to peer pressure, only to later discover strength in solidarity. That morning, he made a decision: he would call a team meeting. He needed to fortify his vision not only with community input but also to unite his employees behind this shared goal. They had all been deeply affected by the town's struggles, and he realized that together, they could harness that collective experience to fuel their transformation. As he gathered his team in the cramped conference room later that afternoon, Jake felt the energy shift. There was a palpable sense of anticipation mixed with trepidation. He stood before them, focusing intently on understanding the nuances of each individual's apprehensions. As he shared his vision, a deep sense of authenticity seeped into his tone. But this time, he didn't just present a plan, he invited conversation, urging them to voice their ideas, concerns, and hopes. "I know this won't be easy," he began, scanning the faces eager yet hesitant. "But I believe that with each of you on this journey, we can redefine what this company represents. I want to know what you think we can do to stand firm against the tide of change we're witnessing." One by one, voices that had previously been tethered with uncertainty began to break free. His employees offered suggestions on community partnerships, innovative product lines, and marketing strategies that pinpointed their unique local qualities. As their dialogue flowed, it became clear that they were hungry to contribute, to reclaim ownership of their roles and their futures, yet beneath the surface of excitement and camaraderie, Jake felt a weight. He couldn't ignore the looming threat posed by Todd, nor could he shake the growing concern that this fragile unity could be undermined. Trust was not easily awarded, their shared effort could prove to be a double-edged sword if antagonized. Jake departed the meeting with a sense of victory ringing in his ears. However, the next day brought a chill, an unsettling phone call from a former colleague. They would soon be hosting an event downtown, one that Todd had a hand in organizing. The implications were clear: Todd intended to cast doubt on Jake's vision and undermine the progress he was trying to build. A direct confrontation seemed unavoidable. As Jake walked away from the call, the exhilaration from the previous afternoon dulled. He realized that shaping a future worth believing in meant stepping directly into the fray. He needed to confront not only Todd but the inevitable challenges that came with carving out a new identity. That night, Jake found himself at a crossroads. He could devise a strategy for resistance, or he could find a way to engage Todd in this process, turning potential antagonism into dialogue. The stakes were higher than merely preserving a business; they were about establishing his right to lead. In his heart of hearts, he knew that every brutal confrontation offered an opportunity to further reveal who he was destined to become. "Tomorrow," he whispered, with growing determination, "I'll face Todd, and this time, I'll stand my ground." Something within him had shifted, an awareness that personal growth required embracing the discomfort of conflict, an acknowledgement that true leadership often blossomed in the very spaces that felt most threatening. The time had come to confront the past and the present. In that moment, Jake realized that change was imminent, and he would need to navigate his own moral dilemmas to make his vision a reality. His next step was clear: preparing not just for a conversation, but a pivotal confrontation, one that might define him more than he ever anticipated. The morning sun sliced through the blinds of Jake's apartment, prodding him to rise. The phone buzzed incessantly on the nightstand, messages were streaming in from his team, eager to discuss the outcome of the previous day's meeting. Instead of feeling buoyed by their enthusiasm, Jake felt a tightening knot in his stomach, an anxious reminder of the confrontation he was about to face. "Today is the day," he told himself firmly as he dressed. Each button he fastened seemed to accentuate the weight of expectation pressing down on him. A mixture of fears flooded his mind. What if Todd undermined him completely? What if his employees felt the same reservations that had plagued him for years? With these thoughts churning in his head, he realized that the right path wasn't just about defending a position but about redefining his purpose as a leader. Arriving at the office, Jake was met with a chorus of good mornings, buoyant but muffled. Their faces flickered with excitement, yet beneath that surface, he sensed something fragile. The air seemed to buzz with potential and fear, causing his unease to amplify. Determined not to project his internal struggle, he mustered a confident smile and convened another quick team huddle to reaffirm their shared mission. "Today is a big day for us," he started, trying to mirror the optimism reflected in their eyes. "Let us stay focused and support each other, regardless of what happens with Todd." The team nodded, their expressions tinged with motivation. Yet, beneath their willingness to engage was an undercurrent of uncertainty, a reflection of his own internal conflict. Just as they began discussing strategies to leverage their strengths, Jake's phone buzzed again, a notification from social media. Todd had posted a public announcement about his upcoming event, practically daring Jake to show his face. It felt like a challenge, a gauntlet thrown down in a digital arena. Jake's heart raced. This was an attempt to divide his team, a classic tactic of manipulation. He could hear Todd's mocking tone ringing in his ears, ready to dismantle everything Jake had set in motion. Taking a step back, he inhaled deeply. This wasn't just a test of his nerve, it was a critical moment of personal development. He reached deep within to confront the vulnerabilities he had buried for so long. Could he genuinely transform this situation into an opportunity, or would he falter at the first sign of adversity? He leaned into that fear, recognizing it as his catalyst for growth. "In adversity lies our strength," he muttered under his breath, a mantra that began to solidify his expectations. Would he emerge a resilient force, or would he crumble under Todd's pressure? The clock ticked mercilessly, reminding him that the hour of confrontation was imminent. With jagged breaths, he charted his mental course. Instead of thwarting Todd's attempts through defensive measures, he would reposition the narrative. He would engage Todd directly at the event, inviting a debate rather than a battle. He could transform the potential confrontation into a collaborative discussion about their differing visions. As he shifted into this mindset, he felt an unfamiliar empowerment wash over him. This was no longer merely about defending himself, it was about leading with purpose, taking ownership of his leadership role within the broader landscape of the business arena. Finally, the time had come. He steeled himself as he stepped into the venue, the hum of conversations swirling around him, each voice echoing his worries and hopes. Todd was already there, flanked by supporters, exuding confidence like a proud peacock. Jake's heart raced, his resolve was about to be tested. "Let us see if the real discussion can happen today," he muttered to himself, striding directly toward Todd, determination emanating from every step he took. As Jake approached, he could feel the eyes of his team behind him, lending strength to his footsteps. Now, it was time for action, a real conversation that would not just shape his journey but could redefine the path for them all. But what Jake didn't yet realize was that confronting Todd would unearth truths he never anticipated, pushing him further along his personal growth journey than he had ever imagined. Jake took a deep breath, the crowded room enveloping him like a wave. As he closed the distance to Todd, every whisper and murmur seemed to amplify the stakes of the moment. He envisioned this confrontation as a strategic dialogue, but the tangible anticipation in the air made him momentarily hesitate. Surely, Todd was anticipating a showdown, but Jake was prepared to rewrite the script. "Jake," Todd greeted with a mock grin, his voice dripping with condescension. "Thought you wouldn't show up. Ready to throw jabs, or actually engage in a real discussion?" Jake's throat tightened slightly. Todd's facade of confidence was designed to draw him into a feud, yet Jake remembered his mantra. Instead of lashing back, he would keep his composure. This was his opportunity to lead, to model the transparency he wanted to foster within his team. "Why not both?" Jake replied, his voice steady, a hint of a challenge woven into his tone. The initial reaction from the onlookers was palpable, some nodded in agreement, others looked wary. This was the pivotal moment, one that could set the tone for the discussions that were to follow. "Listen," Todd leaned in, clearly attempting to control the narrative. "You've been making waves, but the truth is, you don't have the experience to compete with someone like me. This isn't just a game." Jake took in Todd's words, each one an attempt to undermine his credibility. Another wave of uncertainty threatened to crash over him, but he pushed it aside. Experience didn't solely come from years served, it originated in the willingness to learn and adapt. "What you call experience, I see as stagnation," Jake retorted, a newfound boldness awakening within him. The room fell silent. "My ideas may be fresh, but they drive innovation. Isn't that what we need? To move forward rather than to dwell in patterns that no longer serve us?" Todd's eyes narrowed, meeting Jake's with an equal mix of surprise and anger. "You think changing the game means dismantling it? You're out of your depth." "I think it means reshaping it," Jake shot back, gaining momentum. Each word was now a calculated emotional strategy. The focused expressions of his team behind him filled him with resolve. Todd scoffed, but Jake continued, deliberately shifting the spotlight back to their shared responsibility. "We're in a transformative era. Rather than engage in power struggles, our goal should be collaboration for success. Let's outline our visions together instead of tearing each other apart." The atmosphere in the room shifted. The buzz of murmurs began to evolve into chatter, discussions bubbling under the surface as others began to see the potential for a meaningful dialogue. Each moment pulled him further from the darkness of self-doubt that had always lingered on the edges of his consciousness. But as Jake stood firm, a sense of trepidation gnawed at him. Was Todd's aggression merely bravado, or was there a deeper threat lurking beneath that confident exterior? He considered the ramifications of their exchange and felt the weight of responsibility resting not just on his shoulders but on every member of his team who was watching his every move. At that moment, he realized he had stepped into new territory, not merely the showdown he had anticipated, but a multi-layered confrontation rife with promises and perils. Jake glanced at his team again, his heart racing. Their attentive gazes steeled his resolve. If he could shift Todd's mindset, how might that transform their enterprise? The continued exchange, half strategic and half emotional, ignited something within Jake. This was far beyond a simple confrontation, it was the awakening of his genuine leadership. Yet, even as the dialogue deepened, a hollow uncertainty rose within him. Could he genuinely convince Todd to embrace change? As the debate unfolded, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that deeper layers of his weaknesses were beginning to peel away, revealing parts of himself he had long neglected. Leaning into this inner transformation, he braced himself as Todd retorted sharply. "Then let us see if you can rise to that challenge, Jake. But know this, I will not back down easily." As the tension thickened, Jake prepared to respond, knowing that this moment could either be a watershed for his leadership or plunge him back into the shadows of self-doubt. And just then, amidst the escalating intensity of their exchange, a shocking revelation surfaced, one that would irrevocably change the dynamics of their confrontation and, ultimately, his understanding of what it truly meant to lead. What had he misjudged in Todd's approach all along? Jake felt a surge of adrenaline as Todd's words flared an unexpected spark within him. The revelation, something he hadn't anticipated, loomed just beneath the surface of their exchange. Had Todd's aggressive stance subtly masked an insecurity? The thought propelling him forward, Jake grappled with the notion that perhaps he could exploit that latent vulnerability in their dialogue. Harnessing the palpable energy in the room, he leaned forward, lowering his voice to a conspiratorial pitch. "Tell me, Todd, what's really driving this animosity? Is it fear of losing control, or perhaps a fear of being left behind?" The air shifted, an intrigued silence gripping their audience. It wasn't a common tactic to turn the mirror back on one's adversary, but Jake felt a sense of ownership in this moment. If he could bring Todd's insecurities to light, he could shift the landscape not just of this battle, but of their entire working relationship. Jake caught a flicker of surprise before Todd's facade hardened. "You think you know me? You're stepping into territory you're unprepared for," he replied, sharpening his tone. But the slight tremble in Todd's voice hinted at the vulnerability Jake had sensed. "Every leader has moments where they need to reevaluate their path," Jake countered, sensing an opening. "You've led this team, and you've done it well, but maybe it's time to evolve, to learn from someone with a different perspective." The challenge lay in Jake's ability to balance assertiveness with empathy. He wasn't there to humiliate Todd, but to create a dialogue that could cultivate growth. Would Todd lean into this collective chance for transformation, or would he dig in his heels? Grow up, Jake. You think I'm afraid of change? Todd shot back, but the frustration in his eyes betrayed him. For the first time, Jake felt the power of his leadership potential overtaking his apprehension. No, I believe you're afraid of what might happen if you let go of the past, he replied. That fear doesn't define you, but it could certainly choke the air out of this team. Every sentence was more than a challenge, it was a subtle invitation for Todd to surface beneath the bravado, to recognize the underlying fears inhibiting progress. Jake's heart raced as Todd's facade began to crack. I sensed Todd wrestled with his own demons. The room buzzed with anticipation, each member surrendering their resolve, caught in the tension woven by their leaders. Would Todd accept the challenge of introspection, or would he deflect once more? Just as Jake prepared to seize the moment, Todd's expression shifted. You think this is about me? He laughed, but the sound held a tinge of desperation, a note that echoed through the crowd. You think this is just a power struggle? This is about survival. The stakes had risen from personal confrontation to a much broader narrative of control and competition within their industry. For the first time, Jake glimpsed the larger context of their exchanges, the desperation that drove Todd and the organizational threat it posed. I understand that, Todd, Jake said, his voice steelier now. I'm not here to wrest control from you. I'm offering collaboration, innovation, and a new way forward. Holding on to outdated practices is what stifles growth. A murmur rippled through the gathered employees, a silent endorsement of Jake's stance. The power dynamics were shifting. This was no longer just a confrontation, it was a rare opportunity. As Todd's gaze flickered over the audience, Jake sensed the scales tipping. Yet, would Todd summon the strength to rise above his fears, or would he drown in the weight of the past? A deeper realization surged within Jake. This moment was both about him and the entire company, a chance for collective evolution. But the shadows of doubt remained, gnawing at the edges of his resolve. What if Todd lashed out or retreated into defensive silence? Jake steeled himself as he awaited Todd's next move, knowing wisps of potential awaited on the horizon. Entrapped in the unseen battle of wills, Jake's heart pounded in unison with the rhythmic thoughts that echoed in his mind. What hidden allies could emerge if he could foster change together with Todd? And just as he contemplated the path ahead, Todd took a deep breath, ready to challenge the foundation of their entire power struggle. Would the exchange forge a new relationship, or would it lead to further divisions that Jake couldn't anticipate? The tension in the room thickened as Todd held Jake's gaze, a mixture of defiance and uncertainty playing across his features. Every heartbeat felt amplified, echoing Jake's commitment to this critical moment. Would Todd dig deeper into his defensive trenches or rise to meet the challenge? As the seconds stretched, Jake's mental fortitude formed a tight coil of resolve within him. Survival? Todd scoffed, yet there was a hint of something more vulnerable lurking behind his bravado. This isn't a game of collaboration, Jake. It's about power, and I want to let you take that from me. Jake noticed the slight tremor in Todd's hands, the way his eyes flitted away. The fear of losing power was palpable. A realization struck him: Todd wasn't solely a rival, he was a man gripped by the weight of expectation, holding on desperately to the familiar and fearful of the uncharted. Nor am I trying to usurp you, Todd, Jake replied, shifting in his approach. His voice softened, holding a steady tempo that reflected a newfound empathy. But we can't keep running this team the same way if we want to thrive. What worked yesterday won't guarantee success tomorrow. The audience leaned in closer, signaling with their body language that they craved resolution, not yet another power struggle. Jake seized this momentum. He could feel the room vibrating with shared aspiration, a deeper longing for innovation and unity, an exotic wind against the storm brewing above Todd's head. Change is often painful, but this isn't just about you or me, Jake continued, pressing forward. It's about the entire team. Imagine what we could create if we combined our strengths instead of fighting over diminished resources. Todd's frustration morphed into a momentary silence, the weight of Jake's words taking root. Jake felt a rush. He realized he was influencing the discourse rather than just participating in it. He had stepped out of the cycle of conflict to incite a potential evolution. Yet, Jake's heart raced for a different reason now. The stakes had become clearer. If he could draw Todd into this vision, he might not only redeem their relationship but also alter their professional trajectory. What if Todd could become an ally instead of an adversary? Being vulnerable doesn't signify weakness, Todd, it's an opportunity for growth, Jake pressed gently. We need to evolve together or risk being left behind. Can you imagine how powerful a unified front could be? Let us decide to forge a new direction, a daring venture into the unknown. He had bared his thoughts with raw honesty, a powerful tactic that reminded him of his own challenges in confronting change. The struggle to let go of comfort in pursuit of growth resonated deeply within him. Jake's determination planted a seed of hope within him, but doubt hung in the balance. Would Todd lash out, see this as an opportunity to renew their rivalry, or could he recognize the buried potential for collaboration? This pivotal moment could either bind them in mutual respect or fracture everything they had worked for. Todd opened his mouth, stifling some words that danced on the edge of articulation. The pause felt monumental, as if it contained the possibility of reshaping their future. Then Todd exhaled slowly, the defiance in his eyes dulling slightly. What are you really proposing here, Jake? Jake felt a swell of confidence surging. He had anticipated this question. Now he could reveal not just a proposition but a vision, his vision. Let us create a task force that integrates both our perspectives, blending our experiences to inform innovative strategies, Jake said, desperately trying to keep both excitement and apprehension in check. We shape where the company is headed, not just for ourselves but for everyone who depends on our leadership. With the challenge pitched, anticipation coiled tightly in Jake's gut. Would this truly lead to unity, or might Todd challenge him yet again, throwing his world into disarray? As Todd remained silent, a myriad of emotions played through Jake's mind. Was this the inception of a new alliance, or a passage to further discord? The moment of truth loomed. Could he really bridge the divide, or would the specter of their rivalry stifle any hope of change? Jake waited to learn if they were on the brink of a breakthrough or facing yet another barrier. The mere thought sent his mind racing. He knew the answer wouldn't come without a battle. The stillness in the room seemed to stretch. Time felt as if it had congealed around Jake's anxiety. Todd's gaze remained fixed, and Jake could sense his internal conflict. There was an unexpected thrill in the air, an invitation to navigate the uncharted waters of collaboration. This was his moment, and he understood that how this conversation transpired could redefine not just Todd's and his own role but the essence of their team. He expanded on his proposal. Let us not just strategize, let us galvanize the diverse talents within our ranks. We can innovate by including voices that have been muted. By doing so, we could lead the way in fostering creativity and unique solutions. Todd's brow furrowed, and Jake registered his skepticism. Jake could tangibly feel the weight of Todd's past, the burden of being a gatekeeper to success. What if Jake could make Todd see that vulnerability could transform to strength? Imagine conducting brainstorming workshops that break from our established patterns. Jake pushed further, his conviction strengthening. The blend of our different styles could unlock potential we never knew existed. We don't have to fear change, we can seize it. For a fleeting moment, he saw a flicker in Todd's demeanor, a brief glimmer of doubt colliding with intrigue. Could Todd be questioning his entrenched notion of control? But doubt crept into Jake's thoughts as Todd's silence stretched on. Would Todd give him a chance? Was it self-preservation that anchored him in place, or did ambition stir? The decisiveness of the proposal sat heavy on Jake's shoulders, and he wondered if he was ready to withstand Todd's inevitable criticisms. Even amidst his own resolve, a chill of uncertainty rippled through him. He laid himself bare, and now it was up to Todd whether to crush or honor that trust. Jake Todd finally broke the spell, his voice somewhat subdued. You talk about vulnerability, but what if we fail? What if our collaboration stumbles? There's a lot at stake. Indeed, there is, Jake countered, leaning into the moment. But true risk comes not from stepping into uncertainty but from clinging to a stagnant status quo, one that has proven unreliable. His voice trembled slightly, but he held firm. Every successful leader risks failure, but it's also through these experiences that we grow stronger. Todd's posture softened marginally, giving Jake a renewed surge of optimism. He was engaging, not reacting with venomous resistance. Jake took a breath, experiencing the emotional dialectic play out. His thoughts wandered to what it would mean if he caused a shift in Todd's perspective. This could either deepen their existing rift or cultivate a powerful alliance. He was tapping into something fundamental, potentially transformative. Let us do this as a trial work together just for 3 months. If it fails, I'll walk away. But if it succeeds, we could redefine what leadership looks like for our whole department. The challenge rolled off his tongue, and he felt invigorated. Even within this risk lay a glimmer of potential for profound change. Todd's brow knitted once more, an expression of contemplation overtaking previous defensiveness. 3 months. So you're asking me to essentially gamble on trust? Exactly, Jake said, warmth rising within him at the perceptiveness of his words. An investment in each other. It could reshape not only our relationship but how we lead this team altogether. The air felt alive, electric with possibility, and as Todd weighed his options, Jake felt an inkling of hope unfurling within him. He had stepped into this confrontation with a vision and extended a hand rather than a fist. Then, the rush of uncertainty returned, creeping at the edges of his resolve. Would Todd perceive this as an opportunity or a challenge? The stakes had shifted dramatically, and Jake's heart raced, knowing they stood at a critical crossroads. I need to think, Todd finally said, the tension in his voice bordering on vulnerability. The notion that Todd needed time was both a testament to Jake's push and a reminder of the precarious edge they stood on. As Todd turned away, Jake pondered how he might harness the potential of their emerging collaboration into action. Was this a prelude to harmony and new alignment of interests? Or was it simply another chapter in their rivalry feigning truce? Unsure, Jake felt a mixture of anxiety and exhilaration, aware they were on the brink of something extraordinary, yet wondering if he could maintain this newfound momentum. The clock was ticking, and with every second, the challenge grew. How could he leverage this fragile trust to foster real change? As Jake resolved to find his footing, he sensed the shadows of apprehension lingering. He had initiated this journey, but now it was time to delve into the unknown depths of leadership and trust, living up to the promise he had laid bare. What would be the outcome of Todd's reflection, and could he translate this moment into a step forward, or would it slip through his fingers like sand? The days rolled into a week since that fateful meeting, and Jake found himself navigating the delicate balance of anticipation and apprehension. He had taken the plunge, risking the principles he held dear, and now that vulnerable leap hung in uncertainty. A suspenseful longing gnawed at him as he awaited Todd's decision, but in that same breath, Jake discovered a remarkable evolution within himself. He had no longer been the anxious boy shackled by his father's ghost. The brave businessman he began to shape was reflective, strategic, and determined. As he observed the growing enthusiasm in his team, their faith ignited his own resolve. In these moments of undeniable growth, Jake felt a solid sense of leadership unfurling within him. The fabric of self-doubt that had lingered in his mind started to fray. The clarity of purpose he articulated in that meeting resonated deeply. He began to implement the engagement strategies he had envisioned, crafting initiatives that invited employee input and harnessed the collective potential. Weekly brainstorming sessions birthed a whirlwind of ideas, and Jake saw their potential reach beyond mere survival. It was authentic innovation, progress woven from the threads of collaboration. Each session felt cathartic, releasing tension in ways he had long imagined. As days turned into weeks, he invested time to engage with each employee, emphasizing their expertise. Their pride blossomed, and with it, Jake's confidence soared. He could look into each colleague's eyes and see a discernible shift. They were ready to reclaim ownership. It was exhilarating to witness the transformation, a microcosm reflecting his desire to reconstruct the very legacy he had once felt burdened by. Then one evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, heralding new possibilities, Todd finally reached out. "Can we meet?" The text read, curt but telling. The moment felt monumental, yet Jake was armed with more than just hope, he was fortified by the newfound belief thriving within him. When they met, the atmosphere simmered with unspoken tension. "I've considered your proposal," Todd began cautiously, his face devoid of the usual bravado. Jake held his breath, keenly aware of the stakes. "You're right about one thing, maybe I've clung to safety too long. I want to do this." Relief washed over Jake, and warmth surged through him. The gamble had paid off. Todd's willingness to engage was an external confirmation of the journey they could embark on together. In that moment, Todd was not just the rival that once taunted him, he was a potential partner in a shared vision. The narrative shifted dramatically. Jake recognized that this partnership wasn't merely about leading a business, it was about constructing a legacy that both men could take pride in. A palpable energy filled the room as they discussed their joint commitment. They outlined a path forward, one even more ambitious than Jake had initially imagined. Todd openly acknowledged areas where he could improve, making himself vulnerable in ways that surprised Jake. Their dynamic shifted from hostility to synergy, and for Jake, it felt like a validation of his growth. Over the coming months, the business blossomed into something vibrant and community-focused. Every meeting, every customer interaction echoed the values they championed. The results were tangible: a surge in community engagement, thriving local partnerships, and a renewed work culture marked by cooperation and innovation. Jake's past moved to occupy a different space. It was no longer a cage but a foundation from which he launched his success. The boy who once floundered under expectations now stood tall, leading with the clarity of vision and empathy. On a reflective day, Jake received an email that would become an indelible mark in his professional journey. The local Chamber of Commerce had nominated him and Todd for their annual Business Transformation Award. This recognition was not merely a numeric evaluation of sales or profit margins, it was a testament to the painstaking work, commitment to change, and an acknowledgement of their resilience. As he read the words aloud in the team meeting, applause erupted. Cheers crescendoed through the office, a symphonic celebration of what they had achieved together. Jake stood before them, a spine of solid confidence forging through his core, and for the first time, he felt the full force of accomplishment coursing through him. He was not just a businessman inheriting responsibility, he was a man who had reclaimed his narrative, an orchestrator of change, and he had proven to himself that vulnerability bore success if nurtured with authenticity and commitment. Now, it was not only about Jake or Todd, it was about an embodiment of collective growth, a flourishing workforce fueled by entrepreneurial spirit. Round tables filled promptly with discussions that shaped the operational framework, a far cry from the rigid structures of the past. In the end, the journey was not just about reclaiming an inherited legacy, it was about stepping into the light of self-creation, inspiring others to stand with unshakable resolve and courage. He realized that true leadership was anchored in understanding, partnership, and shared goals. As he reflected on that day, pride unfolded within him, devoid of arrogance yet bathed in the deep satisfaction reserved for those who conquer their fears and emerge transformed. Jake Thompson had achieved what once seemed a distant dream. He had written his own story, a testament to the indomitable spirit of perseverance in the face of adversity. And as you've reached the conclusion of Jake's extraordinary journey, ask yourself, are you ready to embark on your own path of transformation? Because if you've enjoyed this emotional story, don't wait even one more second. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you won't miss our next exclusive tales of personal overcoming. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and support this inspiring content. Comment below with your reactions and share your own theories about what makes a true story of transformation, and it's time to share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need this uplifting conclusion in their lives. This is the moment to show your support and inspire others to chase their dreams.